This time on the Adventures of Tarka, I complete my final southbound passage before heading west. I finally get to relax and have a bit of fun, and I get Tarka ready to come out of the water to tackle a long list of projects. Last time, I reluctantly left my favorite place in all of the Eastern Caribbean to continue onward south to Grenada, somewhere that I hope will be safe from hurricanes. Leaving the picturesque islands of the Grenadines behind, Tanagra led the way and we arrived in Curiacou, where we completed entry formalities for Grenada. I actually lost my footage for my short stay here, which in retrospect is maybe a good thing, as much of that time was spent trying to fix my clogged toilet. But Curiacou does have some great anchorages, but don't worry, I'll revisit those later. Like pretty much all my departures, I left Curiacou at sunrise, using only the jib. I put out a fishing line like I do on most of my passages, but I actually haven't caught anything since that time we caught that Spanish mackerel on King of Bongo. The sail to Grenada is straightforward, other than, an active underwater volcano that has to be avoided. Eventually, though, I got tired of the slow sailing and raised my mainsail. This passage was special to me. It marks the completion of my personal little sea trial. 3 months ago, I moved onto this small sailboat without any sailing experience, and upon landfall in Grenada, I will have navigated, alone, through 10 different island nations and across 500 miles of ocean. I know this is nothing compared to the 10,000 miles of ocean that awaits me in the Pacific, but it was still important to me, and I was feeling a bit sentimental. This is it. This is my last landfall for a while. We arrived in Grenada, and just it seems really close, but I got quite a bit of sailing to do still, so probably another 4 hours would be optimistic, I think. But yeah, this is the end of a long set of passages, and I've learned a lot about my boat and about myself and about this adventure that I'm trying to do. Some things you can only learn the hard way, and I've done a lot of learning the hard way, but it's been a lot of fun. I think we will go ahead and go to Panama in the fall. It's across the Pacific from there, and if those things are both something I want to do and that I can do, then I'm going to do them. Yeah, sure, I made plenty of mistakes along the way, and often learned things the hard way. But all things considered, I think I've done pretty well. Rounding the southern tip of Grenada and approaching Clark's Court Bay, I caught a fish. It was just a barjack, but it seemed fitting to finally catch a fish on my last passage. I got anchored and settled, and then brought the catch over to Tanagra, where Mike prepped a nice dinner, gifted to us from the ocean. That's what I've learned from your marriage.
Yeah, she knows everything I say.
Tanagra anchored in deeper water, and I found a shallower spot not too far away. Grenada is a tropical island with many sheltered bays, including this one where I'll keep Tarka. Grenada is also a popular hidey hole from hurricanes, so there's a large cruising community here. And just over yonder is the boatyard that I'll be putting Tarka in, but we'll get to that. It is here where I'll have to wait out hurricane season, and I will use this time to complete lots of projects on Tarka. Mike and Megan were good neighbors to have, and we're also hosting a Swede named Michelle for a few weeks, so she joined us for our adventures. Our first adventure, though, was to get to know the island a little better. Grenada is known as the island of spices, and produces 20% of the world's demand for nutmeg alone, which is impressive considering it's such a small island. The island also has several rum distilleries, some of which still operate using old-school processes. And though I can't speak of the quality of the rum, what it lacks in flavor, it sure does make up for in strength. Almost every type of fruit and spice can grow in Grenada's fertile soil, and many exotic fruits can be found casually on the side of the road.
It's drawing.
And then take a bite.
Yeah, that's a little weird with the star fruit.
Okay, we can go back this way.
Cocoa is also grown here, and there's a cute little chocolate factory that makes some really good chocolate bars. But no tropical island is complete without a nice waterfall, and Grenada is of course no exception. I enjoyed the falls in the only way I knew how. I mean, hey, it's a free freshwater shower. Meanwhile, Mike found his own special way to enjoy the landscape. But we all found one thing that we could enjoy together.
1, 2, 3, on!
Maybe I should explain. This is us losing our hashing virginity. A hash involves the following steps. 1. Get in a band with a bunch of your smelly, sweaty friends. 2. Drive out somewhere strange and remote. 3. Try your best to run through the towns, farms, and jungle on the trail. And 4. Drink and be merry. Oh, and find a hose, because it's a muddy affair. Hashers also like their share of harmless hazing, and new hashers are tricked into getting sprayed with beer to welcome them to the club.
1, 2, 3, on!
It's fitting that hashers like to call themselves drinkers with a running problem. And it makes sense. It's mostly a social event, and it isn't meant to be competitive at all. The drinking took its toll though, and the next morning we really needed something to take the edge off of our hangovers. Fortunately, Mike was kind enough to cook up a delicious breakfast aboard Tanagra.
Should enjoy as a refreshing drink with club soda.
What?
Yeah, I'm kind of keen to try that. Throw a splash of rum in there, game on.
I spent the next few days taking care of chores. After all, the laundry doesn't do itself. It rains quite a lot here this time of year, which is good for catching water, and not so good for drying clothes. But hey, you can't have everything. After a few days of relaxing, we set out on what can only be described as a dinghy pub crawl. It's like a normal pub crawl, except you go from place to place with a dinghy. Don't worry, the people driving were not impaired, but it was this Swede's first time driving a dinghy. Probably our favorite little pub, though, was on an island. Though I started this voyage alone, the only time I've ever really felt alone is while on passage. I'm pretty lucky to have such an awesome group of neighbors to share this beautiful place with. But despite all the fun, there's still work to be done. Tarka needs to come out of the water for a variety of projects before we head west, and there's still a lot to do. But the first step is to get the sails off and stowed away. I will also be flying back to the US for the first and what will probably be the last time on this voyage. But before any of that happens, there's Carnival to celebrate Grenadian style. But that will have to wait until next time.